Good morning. Moses and the burning bush. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, to the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, What is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go, assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob appeared to me and said, I have watched over you, have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favourably disposed towards this people, so that when you leave, you'll not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbour, and any woman living in a house, for articles of silver and gold, and for clothing, which you'll put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians.
Exodus chapter 3, and we are looking at the encounter that Moses had with God. Thank you, Barbara, for doing the morning talk, and thank you for that prompt, that illustration that was brilliant, where there's the burning bush. But it made the point very, very clear. Encountering God is something that each one of us must do. It's not something new, it's something that is found in the Holy Scriptures. First, what I want us to pick out is really this key point that God is encountered in the ordinariness of our life, just in the ordinary life, in the mundane of our life. We don't encounter God perhaps when you go to some extraordinary pilgrimage, Or you go to Lords, you think you're going to encounter God. Of course you might. Or you go to Iona, you think you're going to encounter God there. Or you go to Jerusalem, you go to Jordan, wherever, these special religious places. But God is encountered in our everyday experiences. That's why we encounter God. We don't wait until some spectacular thing happens for us to encounter God. We don't wait until the angel speaks to us for us to encounter God. I can assure you, you wait as long as it's going to take you, the angel won't speak to you. Because he's spoken to you through his word, the Bible. It's there. You wait as long as you can wait for the angel to appear and show up in your room for you to encounter God. I wish you well for your waiting. No, brethren, no. Look at this text in verse 1. Let's read together if we may. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the back of the mountain, or the desert, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. It's almost the name for Sinai, the name that will appear again where he's given the 10 Commandments. All right, what happens then? What was Moses doing? If you go back in chapter 2 very quickly, just to set the background. Chapter 2 and verse 11. Exodus chapter 2 and verse 11. You see why Moses, he finds himself in Midian. What is happening to him? He's supposed to be in the palace with the Pharaoh. Remember, that's why he was brought up. How come now he's ended up in this space, in this place? It's because of what happens in chapter 2, verse 11. Now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brethren, and he looked at their burdens, and when he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren, so he looked this way and that way, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian, and he hid him in the sand. That's what happened. Moses is committed murder. He's killed an Egyptian. So what happens then? In verse 13, we are told this. When he went out the second day, behold, 2 Jewish men were fighting each other. Then he said to them, why are you fighting each other? You are companions. Verse 14. Then he said, the one of them, who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? So Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well, alone. Moses now goes to a place called Midian. Why? Because he has killed someone. He's running away from Pharaoh. He's nobody. He's not a prince anymore. He has no luxury. He's just desolate, poor, discouraged, despondent. He has lost all hope. And what has he become? A shepherd. Imagine the fool. Just imagine the guy who was saved by people. Everything that he wanted, he would just say, flip a hand that people bring stuff to him. But now he is poor, desolate. alone. And it's there that he gets married to Zipporah. And that's why Jethro, his father-in-law. And there he raises 2 children, Gershom and Eliezer. 2 of them are born to Moses. 40 years, Moses was in Egypt. 40 years. 40 years, Moses spent his time in Midian. 40 years. No voice of God for 40 years. No vision of God. Absolutely nothing. Until one day, when he goes to this mountain, we are told now in verse 2, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flame. In the flame of fire from the midst of the bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not being consumed. Then Moses will now turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush doesn't burn. Now, this is verse 4. So the Lord saw that he turned to look, and he called out to Moses, Moses, Moses. Very important, isn't it? Moses was busy looking after the flock. He saw the bush burning, and he's curious to see what's going on. But here's the key point. It was only when Moses turned to look what was happening that the Lord speaks. So the Lord will not speak to us if we don't have time for God. The Lord will not speak to any one of you if we don't have attention to listen from God. God will wait and wait for you and wait for you until you drop everything that you have got, and then you focus your eyes only on God and God alone. It's in that moment that God speaks to each one of us. God doesn't want to compete with loyalties. If you got attention for other things, go on. God will let you go on. Because we cannot save God and mammon. God is a jealous God. We can't save other idols besides God. It's only in this moment that Moses turns to look at this burning bush that the Lord now speaks, Moses, Moses, 2 times. Remember when he appeared to Abraham, he says, Abraham, Abraham, twice. Samuel is in the temple. He's wondering who is speaking to him. And he goes to the priest, Eli, are you the one who called me? And the priest said, no, I didn't call you, my son. Go to sleep. And then the Lord again appeared to Samuel, said, Samuel, Samuel, twice. Remember Saul when he was going out to persecute the church of God's people. And on the road to Damascus, there the Lord appears to Saul and says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Twice. Why is that important? It's simply this, that the Lord knows your name, and he knows it well. God won't call out to so many people. He calls out to you because God has a mission and a calling to each one of us in this church. You have a calling for God in Stanway. You have a calling for God in your family. We need to sit quietly and let God reveal his calling for you. What is it that he has called you to do in the times such as this? What is it that he has laid upon your heart in such time as this? All of us, brethren, have got a calling. All of you sitting in front of me. want you to listen this morning and encounter God in your burning bush. What voice do you hear there? What is God saying to you this morning? See, when the Lord draws attention to him, the second point that we have to look at this is this. When he draws attention to you, he wants you to see the otherness of God. That's what he wants you to see. The moment he draws attention to him, then he puts you in your place. And it's important. Look at this verse with me. Verse 4. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, the Lord called him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And look at what Moses says. Here I am. Two things. He says to him, do not draw near to this place. That's one point. Do not draw near to this place. Number 2, take your sandals off your feet, for the ground where you stand is a holy ground. So when the Lord speaks to us, when we encounter God, 2 things happens to us. Or could be more. But what we see in Moses are 2 things. Number 1, we know that God is the other. Is different from us. God is holy. God is majestic. You can't draw closer to God. No one sees God and lives, except the Son of God who was in the bosom of the Father. No one. And the Lord speaks to Moses, don't get near me. Stay where you are. That's what encounter with God does. It brings to focus one thing, the holiness and the otherness of God. It brings to focus in our minds this great, mighty God, the ancient of days, the majestic, the glorious God we save. Now, when God is magnified before our eyes, this is what happens to us. In the other verse, take off your sandals of your feet. Sandals represents dirt. Sandals represents pollution. Sandals represent sin. That's why in some homes when you go in, you have to take off your shoes. They don't want to mess up their carpet. Because they've been walking around and stepping on dirty, dust, dead things, and some smelly things. You don't want to be walking on my carpet with that stuff. Take them off. If you've got smelly socks, well, we'll see on that. Maybe we can give you some. You're going to teach you some things to wash your socks, some hygienic and some hygiene methods. That's the beauty of taking off your shoes, because then you are aware of your socks, whether they've got holes or not, or they smell or not. So you are always assured, I'm going to have to wash my socks every day. So it's a practical thing, isn't it, for you? And for the owner of the carpet, they don't have to hoover every time. That's why we do it. And I wish maybe our church also practiced the taking off our shoes there. Just left them there before you enter the sanctuary. You know what it tells you? And what it speaks of us? When you do that, what do you say? You're humble. That's what he says. I'm nothing. I'm not important. I'm just the way I am. Nothing to show off. And that's what Moses is before God. He's humble. He comes the way he is, just as he is, without sandals. Remember, sandals represent your worldview. Sandals represent your way of life. The Lord is saying this morning, put it aside. Your arrogance, take them off and put them aside before you encounter God. Your self-centeredness, put it off and put it aside. God speaks to us. And he wants us to weigh ourselves and say, what is it that is standing in the way with God? What is it? And you need to take it off and put it on the altar. Whatever shoes you have, no matter how big your sins may be, no matter how small your pair of shoes may be, it doesn't matter what sizes we have, what amount of sin we've committed or not committed. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And each one of us, we carry the baggage behind us. We carry this thing that we need to lay it on the altar and let go before we encounter the majestic, glorious God. And this morning, as you come before God, what is it that stands in the way? Is it our prayerlessness? Bring it this morning before God. Is it your lack of devotion? We don't spend time with God at all. We are dry as dead as wood. What is it that is standing in the way that you need to lay on the altar this morning that he may change you and transform you? Is it because you are better than others? You think you are better than others? What is it? Is it unforgiveness? What is it that is eating up our spirits? Bitterness, revenge, anger, frustration, addiction. What is it that is standing in the way to encountering God? It's when you lay it down, then this is what God tells you when we do that. The Lord now will let you know this, that nothing will be difficult with you, with God, because God is with you. Verse 6, as I finish on this. This is the oversight of God now. The last point. Verse 6. Moreover, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He's assuring him, look, I'll be with you. Just in case you've forgotten, I'll remind you of one thing. Look back into history and see what I have done with Moses. See what I have done with Isaac. See what I have done with Jacob. Just in case, Moses, you are not sure. Look back into history and learn what I did with my people. One of the problems we have, church, as we finish the encounter, I'm going to give you space to encounter God yourself, is this. For some strange reason, all of us, we seem to forget history. We forget. For whatever reason, we forget history. We forget what has happened before. We forget what happened before that. And in some strange way, we go into this narrow, myopic way of life. As though it's only us that matters. As though it's only you who is important. Although it's just about us, but the ministry and the work of God is universal, is global. It's a God of Abraham. You look back, see what God did with Abraham. He's a God of Isaac. You look back and see what God did with Isaac. In this church, for example, there have been men and women who have worked so hard in this church. They have prayed and they have prayed and they have prayed for the church. We are not the only ones who have been in this church. We look back to the peculiar people, what they did in this church, and the work they put in, and the prayers the peculiar people put in, and all the sacrifice, all the resources they put in, all their tithes, everything they put in to make this church move forward. We look back. And let's be reminded, the peculiar people worked for God. They prayed. They trusted God. And when we come in this moment, we are not on our own. We are connected with the heritage of our brothers and sisters in the past. We are not our own. So we get connected to that heritage we have, the peculiar people. We honor them for the work they did in this church. We honor them for the prayers they made for Stanway for many, many years. So that when we stand in this moment as we go on proclaiming the gospel, we remember where we've come from and we thank God for where we've come from. And we look forward to this battle we have as we imagine this way that we have to fight for God. Remember that in this walk with God, we are not alone. We are a church of God's people. And lastly, the God we see in our vision is the God you get. That's simple. If you have in our mind this God who is mean, or this God who doesn't do much, that's a God you get. If you have in your mind this God of confusion, that's a God you get. If you have in your mind the God of power and order, that's the God you get. And Moses had this in mind. The God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What does it mean? It's the God of the covenant. It's the God who is faithful. It's God who is almighty. It's God who is awesome. And that's why he tells it, I am who I am. I am the Ancient of Days. I don't change. I am the beginning and the end. I am the shepherd. I am the light of the world. I am the truth and the light and life. I am who I choose to be. God cannot be determined by us. God chooses who he has to be because he's God. Is that the God we have? As we prepare to meet God on the Lord's table here, I'm going to invite you just to spend time in prayer as you reflect, as you think about this God, as you encounter God this morning in your space. What kind of God do we have in our minds? I'm going to ask our brother Eric and Eddie to help me with the communion this morning. Just this moment, just quietly pray. And let's encounter God in our space, in our privacy of our hearts.